The war had ended 3 days ago. Not with victory, not with surrender, but with silence. Across the vast plains of Dareth Prime, the banners of the Threx dominion still fluttered in the sulfur winds. Their cities burned with cold blue fire, the kind that did not consume but reminded the living that destruction had passed through. The air carried the scent of iron and rain, the scent of endings. General Kaerith of the Threx stood before the ruins of the human embassy, armor cracked and scorched from plasma rounds. His 4 black eyes scanned the wreckage without emotion. He had seen planets die before. He had ordered it. But this world, this Earth colony called New Eden, was different. Because among the rubble, the humans still sang. He had expected defiance. He had expected hatred. Instead, their voices rose in trembling harmony, a melody that carried through the broken streets. It was not a war song. It was something else, something ancient and sorrowful, yet filled with light. When Kaerith entered the shattered courtyard, he saw her. A young woman stood amid the survivors, her face streaked with soot and rain. Her clothes were torn, her arm bound with rough cloth, yet she stood tall, a candle in the darkness. Her name, he would later learn, was Lira Hale, a medic, not a soldier. She looked at him, truly looked, and smiled. Not the smile of a fool, nor of one broken by despair. It was quiet, calm, a small thing that somehow reached the part of him he thought had long ago died in battlefields light years away. Kaerith's guards raised their weapons, instinctively expecting trickery. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous in their fragility, but Kaerith lifted a hand. "Do not fire," he said, his voice low and metallic through his helm. The woman took a step forward, her eyes, gray, steady, never wavered. "You're the one who ended the war," she said softly. "Then end this too." Kaerith tilted his head. "This?" The fear. The word struck him like a round to the chest plate. He had been called many things, conqueror, butcher, savior of his kind, but never had anyone spoken to him like that. There was no hatred in her tone, only sorrow and a plea too human to ignore. He stared at her for a long moment. The wind moved through the ruins, whispering between them. Finally, he removed his helm. Gasps rippled through the crowd of human survivors. His face was ridged and sharp, his skin the color of deep obsidian, eyes like coals. He was the image of everything they feared. But still, Lira did not step back. "I've seen your kind destroy," she said. "I've also seen what fear makes us do. You could end us. Or you could show them, your soldiers, that mercy isn't weakness." Her voice trembled only slightly at the end. Kaerith's second in command, a scarred officer named Ver, hissed through his fangs. "She mocks you, General." "They mock our losses." But Kaerith was not listening. He was remembering something long buried. The face of a Threx child, pale and lifeless, his own son, lost when the human fleets retaliated years ago. Rage had driven him since then. Rage and the belief that mercy was a myth. Yet here was this fragile creature speaking to him without armor, without power, yet with a force greater than any weapon. He turned his gaze toward his troops. Hundreds of soldiers stood in silent formation, their rifles ready, their eyes uncertain. "Lower your weapons," Kaerith commanded. The order rippled through the ranks like thunder. Ver's mandibles flared. "General, do it! The rifles dropped!" The sound of metal striking the ground echoed through the ruins, and for the first time in years, the general felt something unfamiliar stir within him. Not weakness, not shame, something gentler, like the faintest memory of sunlight. Lyra's eyes softened. She stepped closer, close enough for him to see the faint tremor in her hands. "Thank you," Kaerith didn't answer. He simply watched as she turned to help the wounded, her hair glowing faintly in the dying light. He had faced admirals, assassins, kings. None had ever frightened him. But as she smiled again, a small human smile amid the ashes, General Kaerith felt the first true tremor of fear, not for his life, for his soul. That night the storms came. Lightning rippled over Dareth Prime's broken sky, silent flashes of white that painted the ruins in ghostly brilliance. Kaerith sat alone in the command chamber of the Threx base, a structure carved from black alloy, still trembling from distant thunder. He had dismissed his guards. The corridors outside were empty, save for the soft hiss of cooling vents and the faint hum of alien machines tending to wounded soldiers. He stared at the window, at the rain that streaked against the glass like molten silver. Humans had strange weather, unpredictable, alive. And somewhere below, in the old embassy courtyard, he knew the human woman still tended to the injured. Threx and human alike, Lira. He said the name aloud for the first time. It felt strange on his tongue, soft where his language was sharp, light where his words were heavy. He should have been preparing his report to the Dominion Council. He should have been explaining why he halted the cleansing of this planet. But instead, Kaerith sat in silence, his claws resting on the table's edge, listening to the storm. When he finally drifted into uneasy sleep, the dream came. He stood on a battlefield, but it wasn't one he recognized. The ground shimmered like water. The sky burned crimson. Human and Threx bodies lay together, indistinguishable in the light. He heard the echo of laughter, not cruel but innocent, a child's voice. He turned toward it, heart hammering, and saw his son running toward him, but the child's face changed. The small Threx features melted into something human, Lira's gray eyes staring up at him, calm and endless. "You could stop this," she whispered. Kaerith reached out, and the world cracked apart like glass. He woke with a start, the sound of his own breath harsh in his throat. His armor sensors were screaming. He had crushed the edge of the command table in his sleep. For a moment he simply sat there shaking until the memory faded back into shadows. The door chimed. It was Ver. The officer entered with a scowl etched deep across his face. "You haven't rested, General. The troops are unsettled. They whisper about what happened in the courtyard." "Let them whisper," Kaerith murmured. "They say the human song bewitched you." Kaerith looked up sharply. "Do you believe that?" Ver hesitated. "I believe you looked at them as if they were equals." The word was spoken like a curse. Kaerith rose slowly. His reflection in the dark glass looked less like a warrior, and more like something hollowed out. "You fear that woman," he said softly, Ver hissed. "I fear what she will make you become." There was a long silence. The rain outside had softened to a steady rhythm, like the pulse of a living heart. Kaerith stepped past his second and left the chamber. He needed air, or perhaps something else, though he didn't yet know what. He found her exactly where he expected, kneeling beside a wounded Threx soldier whose breathing came in ragged bursts. The human medic's hands were stained with alien blood, her brow furrowed in focus. She worked with a steadiness that seemed impossible after days without rest. When she noticed him, she didn't rise or bow. She simply wiped her hands and said quietly, "He'll live." Kaerith studied her for a long moment. "You save my soldiers. I save anyone who's breathing, even those who killed your people." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "If I stop saving because of who someone is, then what's the point of being human at all?" Her voice carried no challenge, no pride, only truth. And Kaerith, to his own confusion, found that truth unbearable. He crouched beside her, lowering his great frame until his eyes were level with hers. "Why did you not fear me that day?" Lira was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Because someone had to be the first not to." The words struck him harder than any weapon. Kaerith rose again, his chest tight. He turned without another word and walked back into the storm. The sky split open with another flash of lightning, and in its light, he thought he saw the reflection of his own face in a puddle. For the first time, he did not recognize the creature staring back. That night, as thunder rolled over the plains and human and Threx lay in uneasy truce, General Kaerith realized he feared no army, no council, no god. He feared her, not for what she might do, but for what she might make him see. The dawn after the storm was strangely quiet. Ash still drifted from the sky, soft as snow, blanketing the ruins of Dareth Prime. For the first time in years, Kaerith heard birds, or something like them, calling from the jagged remains of metal trees. Life, it seemed, had not asked permission to return. He stood on a balcony overlooking the valley. From here the damage was both immense and intimate, burned cities beside green shoots forcing their way through cracks. Humanity had always been small in number, fragile in form, yet their persistence defied every calculation his people had ever made. Behind him, Ver's footsteps echoed. "The Dominion fleet approaches," his second-in-command reported. "They expect a victory parade, not a ceasefire." Kaerith said nothing. Ver hesitated, then added, "They've heard the rumors, that you spared the humans, that you walk among them." The general turned slowly. "Do you think me weakened?" "I think you're changing," Ver said quietly. "And I think the council will see that as betrayal." Kaerith's claws flexed. He could almost feel the Dominion's cold gaze reaching across the stars, demanding obedience, punishment, purity of conquest. Yet in the silence that followed, he thought again of Lyra's words. Someone had to be the first not to. "What if they're wrong?" he murmured. Ver's eyes widened. "Wrong? The council?" Kaerith looked toward the horizon where smoke met dawn. "They tell us that mercy leads to ruin. But look." He gestured toward the valley. Humans and Threx soldiers moved among the rubble side by side. They spoke little, wary, cautious, yet their hands worked together. Lira had organized them, not through command but through compassion. She told them to help each other rebuild, Kaerith said softly, and they obeyed, and without threat, without fear. Ver followed his gaze. "Fear is stronger. For the weak, perhaps," Kaerith replied. "But for those who have lost everything, fear has no power left." Ver's mandibles tightened. "You would risk your command for this woman?" Kaerith's voice was low. "I would risk my soul." By midday, he walked the ruins again. Humans paused when they saw him but did not flee. Some even nodded. It was strange being looked at without hatred. He found Lira repairing a water filter by the river. Her sleeves were rolled up, her hair tangled, her hands steady. When she noticed him, she smiled. That same small, impossible smile that had begun all this. "You came back," she said. "You expected otherwise?" She shrugged. "You have a whole army to command, and now apparently a council to disappoint." He studied her face, the quiet exhaustion, the gentleness beneath it. "The Dominion will demand answers," he said. "They will not understand why I stayed my hand." "Then tell them the truth," Lira said. "And what is that?" She set the wrench down and looked up at him. "That war didn't end because you won. It ended because you stopped fighting." Kaerith stared at her. "Do you believe peace is that simple?" "No," she said softly. "But someone has to begin it. Someone powerful enough to make the others listen." Her words echoed in him long after she turned back to her work. That evening, the Dominion fleet arrived. Vast, silver vessels blotting out the sun. Their leader, High Marshal Zeran, descended in a storm of dust and fury. His armor gleamed, untouched by battle. His voice carried like thunder through the ruined streets. "General Kaerith," he roared, "explain yourself. The humans still live." Kaerith stood tall. "The war is finished." "Finished?" Zeran spat. "We do not stop until the stars themselves kneel. These creatures are nothing, they're frail, deceitful, unworthy." A hush fell over the courtyard. The humans gathered behind Lira, silent but unbroken. Kaerith felt their presence, fragile, yes, but standing still. He met Zeran's gaze. "Perhaps," he said, "that is what makes them dangerous." The High Marshal's eyes narrowed. "You've gone mad." Kaerith's hand moved slowly to his sword, and not to draw it, but to unclip it. He let it fall. The metallic sound rang out across the courtyard. "I've seen what strength built on fear becomes," he said. "It devours itself." Zeran's face twisted in fury. "You defy the Dominion?" "I defy blindness," Kaerith answered. "And if that means defying you, so be it." Lyra's heart pounded. She did not speak, did not move. But her eyes met his, and in that moment, he drew strength from a single human truth, that even one act of courage can change the course of 1,000 years. The storm clouds gathered once more, rumbling above them like judgment. The seeds of mercy had been planted, and the galaxy itself would soon learn how deeply they could grow. The summons came at dawn, a message transmitted on a frequency older than Kaerith himself, the voice of the Dominion Council, carried through the static of the void. It was cold and absolute. "General Kaerith of the Threx Dominion, you are ordered to stand before the High Council to answer for your disobedience. You have 3 cycles to comply." The words lingered in the air long after the transmission ended. Kaerith stood motionless before the hollow panel, the faint blue glow tracing the hard lines of his face. Around him, the command hall was silent. Ver and several officers stood at attention, though their eyes betrayed unease. "They mean to strip you of command," Ver said quietly. Kaerith nodded. "Or worse, you could flee," Ver offered. "There are colonies that still honor your victories." Kaerith's eyes lifted to the window, to the sight of humans and Threx working side by side among the ruins. "If I flee," he murmured, "I become the monster they already believe I am. And if you go, then perhaps they will see what I've seen." The next day, Kaerith prepared his ship. It was an ancient cruiser, scarred from a dozen campaigns, its hull patched with mismatched metals. As he walked the hangar bay, he noticed Lira standing near the loading ramp, hands folded behind her back. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "You're going to the council," she replied softly. "I know," he frowned. "And what do you expect to do?" "Remind them you're not alone." Kaerith blinked, uncertain whether to laugh or rage. "They will not listen to you." "They don't have to," she said simply. "But maybe someone will." He studied her, the quiet conviction in her eyes, the same light that had disarmed him once before. He had led legions, conquered worlds, silenced kings, yet this one small human refused to yield to fear. After a long silence, he nodded. "Then come," Ver protested, of course. "She's human, General. The Council will see this as an insult." Kaerith turned his gaze upon him, then let them be insulted. The journey to the Dominion's capital world, Vraxis Prime, took 3 days. The stars stretched endlessly around them, cold, silent witnesses to an empire built on conquest. Lira spent most of the time in the ship's observation deck, staring out at the void. Kaerith joined her once, his heavy footsteps echoing in the stillness. "Do you regret it?" she asked without turning. "What?" "Stopping the war." He considered the question carefully. "Regret is a human word," he said, "but I have thought of what comes next." She glanced at him. "And? I no longer know who I am without war." Her smile was faint, almost sad. "Then maybe it's time to find out." The words struck deeper than she knew. When they arrived, Vraxis Prime glowed beneath them, a world of black glass and red storms. The city of the Council stretched across the horizon like a wound of light, towers spiraling into clouds of smoke. The moment they stepped from the ship, soldiers surrounded them. Lira felt their gazes like blades, but she kept her chin raised. Kaerith walked at her side, unchained yet watched. His presence alone silenced the crowd. The legend of the Dominion's most feared general, now walking willingly into judgment. Inside the council chamber, 12 towering figures awaited. Their eyes gleamed from beneath ornate masks of silver. "General Kaerith," intoned the eldest, a voice like gravel and thunder, "you stand accused of treason, disobedience, and the corruption of Threx honor. What defense do you offer?" Kaerith's gaze swept the room. "Only truth. Speak it." He drew himself to full height. "I saw strength in those we called weak. I saw courage in those we named lesser. The humans fight not to conquer but to endure. They live where we destroy. They forgive where we cannot. If this is corruption, then perhaps our purity is what poisons us." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The eldest counselor's voice grew sharp. "You would have us bow to pray?" "I would have us learn," Kaerith said. For the first time in 1,000 years, the hall fell silent until another voice broke it. Lira stepped forward. "He's right." The guards moved instantly, but Kaerith raised a hand, halting them. Lira's voice trembled but did not falter. "You've conquered countless worlds, but you've never built anything that lasted. You call us fragile, yet look around you. Your empire trembles because it cannot love what it does not control." For a heartbeat, even the council seemed to waver. The eldest leaned forward. "And who are you, human, to speak in our hall?" Lira met his gaze. "The one who smiled when your general came to kill us. The one he didn't destroy." Her words hung in the air like fire. Kaerith's heart pounded in his chest, and not with fear, but with something long forgotten. Hope. The council would not forgive him, easily, but as Kaerith looked at Lira, this fragile creature who dared stand before the most feared rulers of the galaxy, he knew something had already changed. The wrath of the Dominion was coming, but so too was the beginning of something greater. The council's verdict was swift and merciless. Kaerith was stripped of his rank, his command, and his honors. The chambers of Vraxis Prime thundered with the decree. The general who spared humanity is now an outcast, a traitor to the Threx Dominion. Yet even as the council declared him an enemy, something unexpected stirred in the galaxy. Across countless colonies, whispers grew into murmurs. Murmurs became cries. and cries became a chorus of defiance. The humans of New Eden were not the only ones listening. Loyalists within Threx fleets, soldiers weary of endless conquest, began to question the purpose of their obedience. Kaerith had been their strongest commander, their embodiment of fear and order. If he could question the Dominion, maybe they could too. Kaerith and Lira left the council chambers under heavy guard. The streets of Vraxis Prime were lit with crimson light, the storms above reflecting the tension below. Guards flanked them, weapons trained, yet even in the sea of armored soldiers, Kaerith sensed the subtle glances, hesitation, doubt, curiosity. "Do you see it?" Lira asked quietly as they walked. "The hesitation?" Kaerith nodded. "Even among them, not all fear is complete. You've given them hope," she said softly. He glanced at her, surprised. "I didn't choose to give anything." "Perhaps," she said, "but sometimes the smallest choice ignites the largest fire." Her words pressed into him like a warm hand against steel. He had faced countless worlds, annihilated countless armies, yet never had he felt a fire as fragile and fierce as hers. That night, Kaerith was locked in a cell beneath the council's spire. The walls were cold, the air dry, but sleep eluded him. He thought of Lira, of New Eden, of the humans he had spared. And then he heard it, a soft sound, almost imperceptible, a tapping at the cell door. Kaerith approached. Through the bars he saw the face of a Threx soldier he had commanded once, a young warrior named Drellic. His eyes were wide, anxious but resolute. "General," the soldier whispered, "we cannot follow their orders anymore. Not all of us." Kaerith felt something stir within him, a cautious hope. "You know what you risk." "I know," Drellic said. "But we believe in what you—" "And what she has shown us," Kaerith's claws flexed. "Then gather them, quietly, discreetly. We move at dawn." Outside, the galaxy waited. Across Threx colonies, subtle rebellions ignited. Soldiers refused orders to attack human settlements. Fleet commanders reported mysterious delays, miscommunications, and vanished units. Rumors of Kaerith's defiance traveled faster than the council could suppress them. In the midst of this, Lira became more than a medic. She became a symbol, not of war but of courage, of resistance, of a humanity that refused to bow. Colonists whispered her name. Soldiers began to see her as a beacon. Kaerith, once a figure of fear, now moved as a shadow guiding those who sought freedom. His own legend, born of terror, was being reshaped into a shield for those who could not defend themselves. By dawn, Kaerith and a small contingent of loyalists made their escape from Vraxis Prime. The spire of the council loomed above, a reminder of the empire that had exiled him. Lira walked beside him, her calm presence steadying his heart. They did not speak much. Words were unnecessary. The galaxy was awakening around them. Every hesitant glance from a soldier, every secret transmission, every whispered hope was part of a larger current, a tide they had begun to stir. Kaerith looked at Lira. "If the council comes for us, we will face them together." She smiled. "We face them, and everything after, together." In that moment, he understood the depth of fear he had first felt when she had smiled at him months ago. It was not the fear of death. It was the fear of realizing that someone, fragile, mortal, human, could move him more than any weapon ever had. The rebellion had only just begun, and across the stars, the Dominion would soon discover that sparing humanity was not weakness. It was the spark that would ignite a war they could never win. A war born not of hatred but of hope. Kaerith clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the galaxy pressing on him. But for the first time in his life, he welcomed it, because he was no longer alone. And humanity had already begun to fight in ways the council could not understand. The galaxy was shifting. Every colony, every outpost, every starship in the Dominion's reach felt the tremor of rebellion. Orders were ignored, fleets disappeared without trace, and whispers of Kaerith and the human woman spread like wildfire. His legend, once forged in fear and death, now carried a different power, the power to inspire. Kaerith stood on the bridge of a commandeered cruiser. The void stretched before him like a dark ocean. Lira Hale leaned beside him, her gaze steady on the distant stars. Though they had faced countless dangers, she seemed unshakable. the calm eye in the storm that was now sweeping the galaxy. Every loyalist we inspire, Kaerith said. Every soldier who refuses to fire on the innocent weakens them. Lira nodded. But we can't underestimate them. The Council will strike back with everything they have. He clenched his claws. Let them come. We'll meet them not with fear, but with something stronger. They were building an army, a coalition of humans and Threx who had chosen to follow Kaerith not out of obligation, but belief. Fleet after fleet joined them in secret, drawn not by loyalty but by a sense of justice that the Council had long silenced. On New Eden, colonies had taken up arms in subtle resistance. Civilian sabotage supply lines provided intelligence and harbored defectors. They were fragile, yes, but Kaerith and Lira had taught them one essential truth. Courage is not measured by size or strength, but by the willingness to act when fear demands silence. Reports came in from the outer colonies. Entire garrisons had refused to fire on human convoys. Threx soldiers abandoned their posts, joining in acts of mercy. Even some high-ranking officers sent secret messages pledging support. The tide was turning. Kaerith studied a star map on the bridge, noting the positions of Dominion fleets. They'll attempt to crush us here, he said. Vraxis Prime, their capital. Lyra's hand brushed against his. Then we'll make them see the cost of blind obedience. He turned to her, meeting her gray eyes. You've changed the galaxy with a smile. And you, she replied softly, have shown them mercy is not weakness. The first battle was not on the open fields of a planet, but in the void between stars. A Dominion fleet, sleek and merciless, attempted to cut off a convoy of human refugees. Kaerith's fleet, smaller but coordinated, moved with precision and strategy. It was not just warfare. It was a lesson. Every engagement Kaerith led avoided unnecessary death. Every maneuver protected the innocent while disarming aggressors. The Dominion soldiers saw for the first time that victory did not require annihilation. When Kaerith boarded a captured vessel after the skirmish, he found the crew, young Threx soldiers, staring at him with disbelief. Why do you spare us? One asked, voice trembling. Because, Kaerith said simply, we fight to live, not to make others suffer. That single act rippled through the fleet like fire across dry grass. Where fear had once commanded obedience, hope now demanded it. Back on New Eden, Lira moved among the people, tending to the wounded, coordinating supplies, and ensuring the humans and Threx worked together. Her presence was a constant reminder that courage could be gentle. That strength did not always roar. By the time the Dominion's second fleet arrived, a larger, deadlier armada, the rebellion had grown beyond expectation. Colonies rose up in coordinated resistance, and Kaerith's forces, though fewer in number, had the advantage of belief. Soldiers fought not just with weapons, but with conviction. In the midst of the battle, Kaerith looked toward Lira. Do you see it? The tide is changing, she said. Yes, he replied. And it will not stop here. As the stars burned with fire and light, Kaerith realized something profound. Humanity's greatest strength was not in their weapons, nor in their cunning, nor even in their numbers. It was in their refusal to surrender their compassion, their morality, their hope. The Dominion might have believed the galaxy would bend under fear, but they had never faced the human spirit, or the power of a single smile that could unseat an empire. Kaerith's fleet surged forward. Every starship, every soldier, every human and Threx fighter moved as one. The tide of change had arrived, and there was no turning back. In the endless void of space, a new era was dawning, and the galaxy would never forget the names of the woman who smiled, and the general who crawled in fear before her courage. The sky over Vraxis Prime burned red, not from the dawn nor from storms, but from the fires of the Dominion itself. Kaerith's fleet hung in the void, shadowing the capital like an approaching storm. Below, the city pulsed with light and movement, but it was no longer a city of fear. It was a city of witnesses, waiting for the end of an empire that had ruled through terror for 1,000 years. Kaerith stood on the bridge of his flagship, Lira beside him. The hum of engines, the chatter of soldiers, the distant fire of cannons, all combined into a rhythm that matched the pounding of his own heart. We can end this today, he said quietly. Or, we can show them there is another way. Lira smiled, faint but resolute. The galaxy already knows. Today they will see it themselves, he nodded. It was strange to feel hope this fierce, sharper than any weapon, more dangerous than any fleet. The Council had gathered its forces, determined to crush the rebels decisively. Their fleets were vast, their weapons merciless, but they underestimated the power of choice. The soldiers Kaerith had inspired, human and Threx alike, moved not from fear but from belief. Every maneuver, every counterattack was executed with a precision born of conviction. As the battle erupted above the capital, Kaerith led the vanguard. His flagship, massive and scarred, tore through Dominion formations, but he did not obliterate. He disabled. He disarmed. Ships that might have been destroyed instead drifted powerless, their crews alive to witness the mercy that had once seemed impossible. "General," called Drellick, "we've cleared the outer defenses." "What next?" Kaerith looked at the glowing horizon of Raxus Prime. "We go to the heart. The Council must see us, not as enemies but as proof that the galaxy can choose differently." In the capital, the Council waited, their masks reflecting the burning sky. Their hands gripped weapons, claws tight around controls, but Kaerith's words echoed through the chamber. "I come," he said, "not to destroy, not to conquer, but to remind you what you have forgotten. Power is meaningless without respect, without mercy, without life to protect." The eldest counselor rose, voice like gravel and steel. "You have betrayed us. You are a traitor. You will be judged." Kaerith's gaze did not waver. "I am not a traitor. I am a witness. Look outside your windows. Look at the people you fear. They are not weak. They are alive. They endure. And they will never bow to fear again." Lira stepped forward, calm and unwavering. "You taught your soldiers to obey fear. We have taught them to choose courage. Which path do you follow?" The chamber was silent. Outside, the city below was no longer quiet. Citizens, human and Threx alike, emerged from hiding, their voices rising in unison, a song of resistance, of unity, of hope. The Council faltered. Their forces wavered. Kaerith saw it. Hesitation, doubt, a crack in the armor of tyranny. He raised his hand, and with a signal, his forces held. They did not strike. They waited. The song grew louder, a chorus of life and defiance. And for the first time in the Dominion's history, the Council understood that power was not absolute. It depended on obedience, and obedience could no longer be demanded. One by one, counselors lowered their weapons, then their masks. One by one, they faced the humans and Threx who had chosen mercy over fear, courage over tyranny. Hours later, the fires of war had quieted. The city was scarred but not broken. Kaerith stood on a balcony overlooking the capital, Lira at his side. Soldiers and civilians moved together to rebuild, to heal, to live. "You did it," she said softly. "No," he replied. "We did it. You gave me the courage to see another way." Her smile was quiet, luminous, unshakable. "And you gave me the chance to prove that one human, one smile can change a galaxy." Kaerith's black eyes, once hardened by 1,000 battles, reflected the light of the rising sun. He had fought empires, faced death, witnessed cruelty beyond imagining, yet here in the ashes of the Dominion, he felt something stronger than fear, hope and humanity. Across the stars, the legend would be told for generations, the story of a human woman who smiled at an alien general, and of the general who crawled in fear before her courage, only to rise again, transformed to lead the galaxy into a new era, an era where mercy was strength, courage was contagious, and hope was the most dangerous weapon of all.